you. Thanks for having me. Miss Faith, would you like to join me? I have some special guests that I brought with me today. They're much more important than me. I'm going to just set the tone. Miss Faith is going to be brave today. She's learning and growing in public speaking. And we've known each other for 2.5 years now. And she is true to her name. That's what I want to say. And what would you like? Do you want to do this like an interview or do you just want to talk? Okay. So, how did we meet?
We met from girls group,
And where is girls group? What part of San Francisco?
Richard Hill Park and Rec.
And what do we do at girls group?
We praise, dance, and talk about our goals.
And we do that twice a month, don't we?
Yeah, twice a month.
And so when we're not at group, what happens in between? What how much do you have a lot to do with me or a little bit to do with me?
A lot.
And have you learned how to speak Australian yet?
No.
So your name is Faith, and how old are you?
I'm 24 years old
And where did you grow up?
in Richard Hill.
And this feels very different to Petro Hill, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. And we're still in the same city. What is something that you would love everyone to know that would help understand what life on the hill feels like?
It's a big community. Everybody cares for each other up there. And we always have these little events going on up there sometimes. And it'd be fun, drawing, gifts.
People do care about each other, don't they? But life is not always sunshine and lollipops on the hill, is it?
No.
No. Is there something you'd like people to know about the not so fun parts?
No.
No. It's hard to talk about, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, because you live in it all day, every day. Yeah. So, where have you been living? This is a safe place. Where have you been living for the last year?
I've been living at this program, getting my housing together. I just started working.
Just doing like 3 jobs. And it's been more than a couple months. I think it's been 5 months. 4 or 5 months, yeah. 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 Because she's been working with us for 4, but there was a job training program for a whole month before that to get it all ready. And I remember seeing her Instagram stories where she's like, "I'm work ready. I'm going to work today. It feels good." And that just made me feel good that the impact of it, we can think a 4-week program is quick, and you were paid from the day you arrived and you showed up. What did it feel like going from not working and wanting to work and finally having a chance?
It feels good to have a job because it keeps your mind off of stuff that you're going through in life.
I'm remembering the day we went to the bank to set up a bank account. Tell me how that felt. Tell everyone.
It felt good to have a bank account.
Why did it feel good?
Because it felt good because it's better than a cash app or cashing your check at a place where they have to take funds out of your check just to cash it.
All the money's yours and you're in control of all the money. And that is, I get the privilege of seeing the backside of these stories. We're summarizing it in 1 or 2 sentences. But I try not to cry when I say those sentences and hear it, because that smile, it tells you the other stuff. That smile is her persistence, her tenacity, her having faith in herself as much as anything else. So you are working on your housing, we have a center. I'm giving you a little break. I'm telling you a few things early, but we have a center now in Bayview. And do you have your own office?
Yes, I
Do you have your
my
own
own
desk?
office.
Do you have your own
after-
dry erase markers and a whiteboard? She is so organized, and she has like a filing thing with all of her papers, and she's always ready. And how does that feel? Because that is your space.
It feels good and peaceful.
And here I am thinking, this place is not exciting enough. I don't have enough activity. And they're all like, it's so quiet. We love it. Tell me about the space, because there's a door. Even though the walls are glass, there's a door, and people have to do two things before they come in. What's the first thing?
Now,
Yep. And
close the door behind.
well, they can close the door. They need to ask if it's okay to come in, don't they?
They
They
need
have
to
to
ask.
wait for you to say yes into my space. One of the things for Faith is she's currently living in a shelter, and there's a distinct lack of space. I don't know if you've ever been in one of the shelters that we have in the city, but it's a big open space, much bigger than this, with lots of beds, right?
Yeah, it's a lot of beds, people, they dogs and cats.
Lots of noise, isn't there?
Yeah, lots of noise. I just put my headphones in and I'm alright.
The good thing for me is about having a centre is Faith can now come to the centre during the day rather than having to be out in our noisy city, which is still fine. But I just want to encourage you in front of everyone so that they can hear this reality too. She's changing because of space. She's changing because of community. She's changing because of faith, externally and internally. And that silence is changing her as well. So it's not. Are all your problems solved yet?
Yeah.
Oh, really? Oh my gosh, my job is done. It's. Can you start working on my problems now? No, your problems are not all fixed, but some of them have lessened, and the water level's going down, or other things come up whilst you resolve other things, because that's life, isn't it? What is one thing that you want to see different by next summer?
I want to see me like in my own apartment and working and just be myself.
I want that too. She's very patient. We are working on some significant things with a specific voucher that Faith has just been patient and stayed the course with all. There's so much red tape. There's so much difficulty. I don't know how it's easy to actually make it through, because it feels like it's set up to make you fail. But she keeps going. She keeps showing up, and staying committed to the course is what we all need to do for our life. So we are actually seeing a miracle happen with HUD, and specific scenario for Faith that is, there's a woman at the housing authority that she's like, I need to believe in miracles. If we don't believe in miracles, they can't happen. But if we do, they might just happen. And so with thinking about a house, when someone's polite and doesn't know you, they usually knock on the front door or they ring the doorbell of the apartment. But in my family, if you know each other or your family, you don't do that. You come around the back, or you come around the side door. And so I'm trying to think of that as far as community as well, where we are known to each other more. And so one of the things that this woman from the housing authority has, she just believes in Faith's story so much. I don't quite know why or how, but I'm not going to complain. And she's helping some other things happen, so Faith continues to get the community support from Turntable, as well as get the housing voucher fulfilled as well. So it's hard to believe because the miracle hasn't quite happened yet, but we're hanging in there. And Faith, I definitely want to see you in your own apartment too. And you're doing a great job at work, so you're still going to be working for sure. So Thank you for being brave and
welcome.
for sharing your story. This woman is teaching me about faith.
Would it be possible to ask Faith just a few questions very quickly?
Are you open to answering a couple of questions?
Oh, that'd be amazing. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Have you still got the mic? Oh, no.
Thank you so much for coming today. Your story is just so inspiring. Really appreciate you being here. So, I just had two questions for you. The first is, what were one or two activities through the program that you enjoyed doing that were fun to you, or when you were getting started that you thought were engaging?
Taking walks and going to the beach to listen to the ocean and birds.
Amazing. Yeah, those are great. And we have so much beautiful nature, in San Francisco and the Bay Area. And second question is what jobs did you kind of evaluate, and what are some areas that you're interested in kind of exploring more and growing?
I had a lot of jobs I do like, and in the future, I want to just focus on doing hair.
I found out she's an amazing cook. She's been keeping that from me, but the secret's out.
Well, amazing. Thank you so much for being here today. It's really helpful and inspiring to hear your story.
You're welcome. Thank y'all.
So you get a different part of the world today. I hope you can understand me. In Australia, we have a thing that we do at the cricket, which is kind of like a call to the wild as well. When an Australian says Aussie, 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 does anyone know the response? Oh, very intelligent people in the room. I was at the lake like 4 hours away on the weekend and saw someone walking out of the parking lot wrapped in an Australian flag towel. So I wound down my window and went, Aussie, Aussie, Aussie. And someone was like, oi, oi, oi. And we were like so satisfied just by that. So my name's Robynne Jeisman, and Turntable is the nonprofit that I pretty much created. And I learned by being here, I get to say CEO and founder, and that feels like, oh, there must be someone else here. But nope, that's me. It is a culmination of a lot of stories and experience and nonprofits that I ran in Australia, mainly Melbourne, Australia, which is very similar mindset to San Francisco. We want to make things different. We want to make things better. We want to collaborate together, and we're not really satisfied with the status quo. It's definitely a pioneering spirit that we have, and so I feel quite at home here with the same type of mindset. So our mission is really cultivating places for young people who are impacted by the juvenile justice system, exploitation or trafficking, and homelessness to experience health, independence, and a safe place of belonging. Not hopefully one, but we want them to have all of those things. Cultivating, I am definitely a green thumb, and so for me, it is like the plants that we pay attention to, that hopefully if we give life and love to our plants or anything, each other as well, we will grow with beautiful things. Safe places of belonging is just something I say all the time, and I'm going straight to the bottom because it's there as a theme, it's there as a foundation under everything that we want to offer to our young people. Some of our young people don't feel safe in their bodies. Some don't feel safe in their homes or their streets, their neighborhoods, their cities. The aim is they would eventually feel some sort of safety in the world. I'm not sure I even feel that anymore. I'm on edge trying to get on a plane at times, or I'm at home here and need a break, go somewhere else, and we make ourselves uncomfortable, which helps ourselves grow. But that's one view of the world. Another view of the world is that is an exciting place, full of new things, new opportunities. And my hope is that our young people, depending on their reference point, will be able to experience safe places of belonging. Talking about Faith's little office space is the everyday example of what that can look like, that it is an expectation that people will knock on the door, especially if you live in a place with lots of people and your boundaries are not respected. People just bash in and go, hey, you, or this and that. It's the daily repetition of those experiences. The solutions that I get out of bed for, I moved countries for, and our team seek to solve and provide is housing stability, that should say, for our traumatized youth. We prevent and respond to sex trafficking and provide psychosocial and emotional development and healing. So, has anyone heard of Adelaide, South Australia? That is America. There's a lot of hands. Wow. That was where I was born and raised. And then I moved to Melbourne when I was in my mid-20s. And Adelaide is, I think it's a big city in American mindset, but in an Australian mindset, it's actually a small city. I am from a relatively big family, and I'm the eldest. And if I think back to my childhood, life seemed pretty good until I was about 10 or 11. And I actually grew up in church and was never in foster care, no parents in jail. My parents are still married, and life set. And I went to one school here, one primary school, one secondary school. So there was not that much change. And on the front view, it would look like life was pretty easy. And then this 1 year happened, and I had a sibling die. Dad lost his job and had a mental breakdown and ended up in and out of hospital for many, many years. And the impact of those two of those three things predominantly still are a struggle to this day. In those high school years for me, I had a couple of mentors, a couple of people that went the distance with me. And I would say being a teenager in Adelaide in the 90s compared to now was a walk in the park. But for me, it was hard. And it was there was lots of trauma that I experienced that I can't sum up in a couple of sentences that I've still needed to work through. But did I think it was trauma then? No. I did know in my body that maybe something wasn't quite right, but it's the life I had and the life I was trying to live, so I was doing my best. So I think back, one of the inspirations is one of my youth leaders that I still think about was sitting in the car. I don't know what I was talking to her about, but that is a memory that I hold firmly about why I do what I do today. And it's part of the influence and inspiration around why Turntable is called Turntable. Turntable is based off of a DJ. When you have two turntables, a good DJ changes the song and didn't even realize, and is still dancing. And you're like, hang on a minute, we went from Prince to Whitney Houston. How did they do that? And to me, that is your story and my story coming together, and the world is forever different. The ripple effect is the world is different. Our new sound is our slogan, because I want to believe that when two stories come shoulder to shoulder, the world will be different and there'll be a new sound in the air. I'll get on to some of the other meanings later, but for me, I want the inspiration around sitting in a car having a conversation. How could that cause me to move states, move to the other side of the world, and start this type of thing and end up doing prevention and response to trafficking and housing solutions? It really is as simple as that. And it's not simple at all, but but in my mind, when Nicole asked me, share some of your inspiration of how and why, that's the seed, that's the beginning. And I hope that makes it tangible and real for you, that whatever your idea is or your sphere of influence, go back to why you were inspired, because that will become your North Star, and that will continue to help you get through the hard stuff as well. At 16, and Faith and Kayla don't even know this stuff about me, so you're going to learn too today. At 16, I don't know why, but the US has been on my heart the whole time, since I was a teenager. And I thought I just was a little obsessive of Sister Act 2. Or I thought I just loved hip-hop and Jordans a little too much. And influence about America is a very influential country to Australia. So it's also really hard at 16 and every year after to know, do I just love that culture, or am I called here? Is this my life purpose? So I just sort of let it be and did what I needed to do. But when I moved to Melbourne, and I wanted to change. I feel like I'd outgrown my little city, and I moved to Melbourne, and it's good to look back because all those 10 years I was there really trained me. And you probably remember me saying Turntable was a culmination of a lot of the nonprofits that I ran in Australia, where I look back and I know that was a step that was worth taking and necessary. But when I moved to Melbourne, I was like, if I can't make it here, I won't be able to make it in America. And that's when I was like, oh, the America thing is still there. So I just got on with running foster care programs, a homelessness program. I learned a model that is the model that I've brought to San Francisco. I started learning about the connection between foster care and the vulnerability connected to trafficking and the experiences. That is now we have lots of data globally for that, of the connections. And so just fast forward it. You have to read the book or watch the movie. That I'm sure Minnie Driver will say yes, and I'm sure she will be in my movie. But the quick version of coming from Melbourne to San Francisco was really that the dream was still there. And one day on the 4th of July, I got let go from the only job I ever got let go of, and I don't miss that job anyway. It was my 4th of July, Independence Day. I didn't realize the humor in that until later. But I had a season in that new change and transition where I don't know if it was either a thought or it was God, but the phrase, "it's time to dream again," came to my mind. And I knew. And this is my Robynne version. I'm like, if God, I'm a Christian, I believe in God. If he had a remote control, I believe he was pressing play on San Francisco at that point. I just knew. But I didn't know the details, and I believe I still got choice. So it's like I said, the UK or the US, and the power of choice and showing up for yourself is important too. So long story short, I chose San Francisco, and it chose me most of all. I didn't know coming here that people try and live here and make it. And if you tell people you live in San Francisco, you're like that extra gold star. But I'm here, and I love it now. And I had to learn to love San Francisco, and I did that mostly through the people and the stories. The other inspiration is really simple for me, is that I wanted more for others. And I really believe that we often close gaps for what we did not have, or we build on what we are grateful that we did have that was given to us. How many of you have siblings that are doing the opposite to the way mum and dad brought you up, and then others that are doing exactly the same? It's usually it's not like totally aware of it, but we're like, oh, that didn't happen for me, and that's my business idea. Or I really am grateful and I'm going to do it a little bit different, but the inspiration is based off of things that were happening. So that's a bit of me. Our turntable model and programming, the things that we are doing are in the top right, and the things that I want to do are in the bottom left. Because I'm a visionary, and visionaries don't stop thinking and find it hard to sleep because of the first point. And I'll break down our our outline a bit later in the presentation, but I can proudly say we are both providing housing options and removing barriers for young people to access their own housing options. We integrate that with a phrase that I do not like, but if I try and change the language, no one knows what I'm talking about: case management. Why I hate that? No one wants to be managed or feel like a case. But right now, that's what people know and are familiar with, so I'm going with it. And mentoring is woven into everything that we do because relationships change lives. I'm not the only mentor. Anyone that is on the team, in my mind, is mentor, but we do have specific mentoring that happens. And we have both live-in mentor opportunities within housing and community mentors because we often need lots of positive adults in our life. One day, I would love to run a wilderness adventure therapy program. I did that in Australia, and it was professionally and personally one of the best things I've ever done in my life. And nature changes our DNA. I used to live in the Presidio, and I remember the first week living here, and I felt like my body was all my cells were hydrated from all of the beautiful trees and nature. And so I want to offer that to our young people. We've done little programs, but I want it to be an integrated, regular part of our model. Now we have a centre. I would love to have an in-house therapist as well so that we can have them feel like real people. And I'm a trained therapist myself. I'm actually an adolescent trauma specialist, but that's not the role that I offer the young people. But I love to be able to see kids on a good day and a bad day and know that they've got, there's an importance for the one-on-one as well, which I want. But we don't have that yet. And then group work may be a name that you're not familiar with, but group work is a little bit like what Faith shared about with girls group, but group work is often a shorter, like an 8 to 10 week program with a focus area and an internal commitment and group agreement in a safe place. And I would love to do that. And often I learn from the young people. If they don't feel safe and they want to do boxing or they want to learn how to paint, we'll do a series, and it'll be integrated themes and self-awareness with food, sharing food together, sharing a safe place. And it's peer-led, and it's really, really powerful as well. So a housing snapshot. I'll break down a few different things about housing, seeing as we all passionate about that. We have 2 phases of housing, and at the moment we focus on housing for 18 to 25-year-olds, just the stage we are in our nonprofit. Lead roommate is the model of housing that I was talking about in Australia that doesn't exist here. There's a lot of close seconds and variations, so I wouldn't say it's the solution to homelessness, but it's a good model that has good outcomes and is one of my best efforts to help join the team. We are currently working on 2 4-bedroom houses in San Francisco, and we gain those opportunities through favour and good trust from landlords in the city, and it takes a lot of work to get it up and running, but we are working on that. We did have one in another county, but we did recently close that down, but it was a good pilot and it felt good to get it started. So that's in San Francisco, and then we have 8 apartment studios, which is our independent living, or phase 2, as you would want to think about it. Those options were not available to young people 2 years ago. So that's 16 housing options that we've been able to create through ends private. It's not connected to the city funding. We're not funded by the city or anything integrated like that yet. But it is really exciting to watch young people want to show up for themselves. And like Faith is saying, a lot of our youth say, I just want a job. I just want the purpose. I want the connection to my goals and planning, so then I can start achieving all the other things that I want, and housing's always top of the list. So currently we have a super small team, and we are regularly working with 28 young people, which is a lot. And yes, you saw that right, we are in 5 counties. 4 of our young people are supported with their own leases. And that's part of the phase 2 independent living, where we've helped young people obtain their own leases. But we all know that the house is not the only thing that you need. You need support. And if you have mental health issues or family drama or stuff you need to work on, you still need someone to talk through those things with. So we are integrating the case management with the housing for their greatest success. We have, in the last 12 months, rescued 3 young people from trafficking, and 1 is living in a facility. 1 will close with us in 3 months because she's actually reunified with her family. And another one's, when I say close, it's just meaning that intentional support because they're doing well, but we don't really graduate our young people from the program because you don't really graduate from relationships, hopefully, unless it's a bad one. You don't graduate, you just drop out. So that for me brings joy, knowing that, oh, you're doing so well, you don't actually need to see me weekly, but the centre's there, phone calls available if you need. So we also, sounds like a lot of people here are familiar with Love Never Fails. We partner very strongly with them. They actually contract me to provide a lot of the case management in San Francisco. We're currently doing, that's the girls group that Faith's talking about. So we are working with 20 young people, and the partnership is alive and kicking. We love it. It's really, really wonderful. Okay. So integrated care is very, very important to me. I don't think that compartmentalizing is a realistic way in the big picture, but it is necessary day to day or seasonally. We are not just 9 to 5, and I understand that's necessary for some organisations, but for my young people, it's necessary for me to have my own boundaries, and so there is work hours and within that, but it's not 4:59. Too bad. I'll talk to you tomorrow. It does. We ebb and flow a little bit with the need in the community. We now have a community centre in Bayview, and that has helped the accessibility and efficiency as well. Having a safe place rather than doing life coaching on the hood of my car, or the unpredictability of a cafe, or you don't know what's going to happen. Those things are still part of community outreach and flexibility, but the centre is a really important launching place for us, especially to move forward. And it's really important that there are many positive adults in a young person's life. My hope is that the support that young people have, they will continue to build on that more and more and more. And one of the anecdotes from one of my young men is just continually makes me happy. It's like, I've always had a good experience with anyone from Turntable, and I hope I can continue that. And that's everything from our partnership with another community resource called Care Portal. That means there's like so many different names and faces that could come into a young person's doorstep, or text messages or experience, and they are just wowed that people still care. And that's the part that's, if you don't know about Care Portal, that for me, if I just sum it up, that's the one testimony that every young person shares is, I can't believe people still care. And it is quite amazing. And so the positive adults doesn't always have to be weekly mentoring or case management. The positive adults can be, you are building into the worldview being changed in that regard. Our team right now, we have a case management team and a housing coordinator, and she helps connect those landlord relationships into making a reality for the young people to move in. Community and live-in mentors. We just hired a tutor yesterday, and so that is very exciting, and Care Portal is a very important part of our team as well. And Kat is here, which I was like, did you know I was speaking today? She didn't. It just feels like a hug to have her here. So, and we have 2 young people employed currently with our partnership with Young Community Developers, which is a program helping young people, which is part of what's helped create that opportunity for faith as well. So our funding is currently a combination of private donors from Australia and the US. Contracted services is through a couple of different organisations, and Love Never Fails is our biggest partner. We have some small grant funding, and then fee for service is also an option just to grow in that way. I just got to a point last year, I'm like, there's not enough Robynne anymore. I've raised that bucket, but we can grow in that way. And so for me, some business coaching has been really helpful to grow in that personally, because I love to be able to just offer everything and it doesn't have to cost anyone anything, but I get tired. I've had a few more birthdays and I don't have as much energy anymore. And you've got to work smarter, not harder, right? So my ideal design would be to have a variety of housing in urban, suburban, and rural options. I would love to have a property far away. That feels like a whole non-profit idea on its own, but that young people that need 12 months to get out of the city could live there, and maybe they could reintegrate back in. Some of our young people just need to be in a different house, but the same zip code as their family, and to preserve that relationship with family. That's actually part of my story. Is I moved out when I was just turned 19. I felt like I couldn't live at home anymore, and the internal conflict was so much, but my relationship with my family was able to be maintained and preserved and get better by having a breather off-site. And so some of our young people need to literally get away from that neighbourhood and have a full change. And so suburban and urban is important too. I think that we just experience different things in each experience. So that would be it's not the ideal design, it's my ideal design. I want to go back to this, just to give another little spotlight on wilderness adventure therapy, housing, and Care Portal. So I had an idea that if I can't run the whole program of wilderness, why not teach the young people about herbs and plants and nature inside? If you've got a small little apartment, you can still bring nature inside. So we can still grow little parts of our vision from little things, big things grow. And so we had a church supported us in getting a bunch of different plants, and we potted them all in pretty pots, and the young people at that season had the nature inside their home. And then it's so fun to then hear them talk about their plants when I do the home visits and those sorts of things. So, all right, these are some of our many partners. We partner with San Francisco Rec and Parks as well as Love Never Fails. U3 Fit is in Bayview. It's a fitness studio. They do a variety of different health and wellness options and massage. And so we often need massages for our young people. It's not a luxury request. It is to help with regulation of body, connection to self, and especially if you're a trafficked survivor or at risk of exploitation, the experience of positive touch where no one is asking for anything in return is, I can't explain how important that. I do it just so I can stay relaxed and rested and give my best self to the young people, but our young people need it for different reasons. Living in trauma is, they think something's wrong with them sometimes, and there's nothing wrong with them. There's just a lot going on. New Day for Children, Special Operations are very important partners around our rescuing and continued service supports moving forward. Young Community Developers, or also known as YCD, are an amazing partner in Bayview. Us for Us is also in Bayview, and some of, there's so many things going on in our city, you may or may not have heard of them, and we have a variety of local church partnerships, some of which are providing positive housing options with and partnering as well. Nicole and I were talking about the pandemic briefly a couple of weeks ago, and she just invited me to share a little bit on some spotlights of observations I've seen and the impact of the pandemic on our young people. I've noticed that youth are much more hesitant to engage in person, phone calls and on camera, even though they're also very familiar with it on Snapchat or on their FaceTime and those sorts of things as well. And I'm noticing that doing things alone is a challenge when out in the community. And things like can I come to work but I want to bring my friend, and those sorts of things is common, and it's that experience of having been in, still wanting to wear masks, and it's okay, but it's that the formational stuff when you're as a teenager, the impact on social and emotional skills is quite significant. So my final comment on that, just not to talk about it for too long, but yet we are wired for relationship. So it's also, despite the pandemic, it's tempting for us to think, our teenagers are breaking away from us. They used to sit and cuddle up and read a book at night time, and then all of a sudden they're pushing away and they don't want to, they're walking 2 miles ahead of me at the farmer's market and all kinds of things. Lean into our precious teens. Helicopter parenting is also not as helpful as some might think, but lean in and care, ask them the questions. Our young people are wanting conversations, and so we need to offer more, not less, of the in-person realities, which is like, oh my, kids want to ride bikes in the street, they want a drop-in centre, feels like the 80s, and I just think they're good things for society and for ourselves. So that connection to each other is really, really important. Our ethos really is around safety, creating that safety, maintaining that safety. Meals is a big one, because even when I talk about Turntable, we turn into each other when we come to the table. We don't come to the dinner table and then all sit back to back. And that concept of gathering our hearts and minds together is really, really powerful. Having very realistic boundaries and being authentic with each other is also part of our core ethos. And you may or may not have heard of the Circle of Courage, which is a Native American framework and concept, which really is for all humans, but I've been trained in it mainly for at-risk youth, and our logo is based off of the Circle of Courage. I believe in it that much. And it's the all four are held in tension, where we need to belong and we need our sense of independence. More in short version, we need me and we. And then we all need to be good at something, which is mastery, and contribute back to society, which is generosity. So an example for my youth is I might be working with them for 6 months and they never ask me a thing about me. And then all of a sudden they're like, how was your weekend? Drop the mic. And that's an example of generosity, when they have been able to rise up to a level of thinking outside. And it's not that they're selfish, it's they're surviving. And they're just trying to cope and make it through the day. And so it's really looking for indicators, things that you're trying to offer, but also look at it as an outcome as well. And lastly, if you are interested in anything that we're doing and would like to get involved, these are in no specific order. Advocacy is super important. People know people. That's how I've made it through, really, is just keep asking questions. Do you know anyone? No is fine, but do you, within your experience or perspective, do you know anyone that might be able to help our mission and vision? I definitely always welcome monthly donor pledges and connections to landlords if that is in your wheelhouse, and event coordination and interior design are current needs at this point as well. But if something else excites you, I am always available for chat. Thank you so much, and that is me.
Thank you so much, Robynne. It really is quite, and you might want to keep that on because I'm sure some people are going to have some questions for you. It is really, really incredible what you're doing. You know, if you think back to your own journey as a teenager, maybe when it was about time for you to get your own apartment, either maybe your parents helped you or they co-signed for you. You always need someone that's going to back you up because you have no rental history. You have nothing behind you. And then add on trauma and, you know, adverse situations. So what Robynne is doing is linking these teens, these adolescents, to housing and co-signing for them, and then providing them with the support and mentorship so that they can really get on their feet and start a life of their own. And I think it's really unique what you're doing because you're not only helping them, and these are people that she will go out into the street and do outreach, find them in really troublesome situations, bring them in and wrap your arms around them. And it's really, really, really incredible. So we're so grateful for the work that you're doing. And when we had a long deep dive conversation about a week ago that was so powerful. And one thing I said to you was that you're like water. You know, like she'll get into the grooves when she feels like some kind of barrier is coming up. She's like, okay, well, I'll just go this way. I'll go through the back door. And she's really helping these people that might otherwise be hitting roadblock after roadblock after roadblock. And when you're dealing with roadblocks, when you're also processing trauma, those roadblocks really feel like not something that you can overcome. And you're really kind of helping to guide them around and do a lot of workarounds and these relationships that you've built. And it's very unique to what you specifically do. So thank you for sharing. I definitely have learned a lot from the work that you do, and you're filling a very specific niche. So what questions do we have? Yaniv has a question for you over here.
Yeah, it's such an honor to have you here today. Thank you so much for sharing, and you're really doing the work. It's been really informative. So I have two questions. One is, can you share a bit more about your case management practice, kind of what that looks like, what goes into that, like during the program, afterwards? And I am curious a little bit of like other names that you would like for that, since you said you weren't a fan of.
I'm going to start with that. I would love youth advocate. Youth advocate feels like people won't take it seriously enough, but that's really what it is. It's that water. I don't know, maybe I'll call them deep sea divers, maybe. Maybe I'll give them a different name. Youth advocate was really what I was coming up with, but I kept having to say, oh, it's a case management. And maybe I'll get an opportunity to shine bright in that way one day. But that's I've wrestled with so many different names, like peer advocate, but peer advocate is probably what I would have a young person that's been in the I've got a couple of young people that could be that now. Yeah, I'm not
How
sure.
would you describe that role for you? Like, what are the responsibilities of that role?
And I think this is the same thing about recruitment. It can sound case management is a serious role, but the job description is sort of, if we just looked at words, it's the halfway point of case management and youth advocate. Heart is very important. You have got to want to believe in the young people that they are the expert of their lives and they don't know everything all at the same time. And they know what they need. They need that time to listen. Case management, I'll just stick with that word for the moment. We start with a pretty comprehensive intake form where I feel like I'm adding more and more to it the more I understand the needs of the city and how to but getting that information at the front end. But I need to create a safe place first for them to ask it, because otherwise it's like having the first cup of coffee, or do you want to ask someone social security on the first date? It's not, I mean, I'm not asking their social security, but it feels intrusive, and I've got to try and find a way to develop it, because at the moment I'm still doing the intakes, and I know how to make them. I have kids call me because someone said I was a good person to call, and they're crying and telling me their whole life story. That's a gift I have. People do it everywhere I go. But that doesn't mean that has to be the experience every time. But the outcomes of that is because there's a referral usually that's come from someone else that recommended Turntable first, so then they call. So case management really starts from the first phone call, because I'm doing an assessment of need. And we don't do emergency housing, and I don't run any housing facilities at the moment. So I have to vet is not the right word, but I have to assess the need of the person to know that when they're in the housing we have, it will be a success. And so that looks different, because we've got some landlord partnerships, but some of them have very, very fine-tuned specific requests, because fear is high, and thankfully they trust me. I'm like, I don't actually work with that kind. That's not what we do. So that's okay. We have to part ways, but most of the time I'm coaching them through that. So we do everything from education support, walking alongside someone, getting them back in school, attending IEP meetings if necessary, medical, sexual health, response to sexual violence if necessary, court support if there's experience, even down to fines or other cases, family mediation if that is necessary. There's some families that we work with the whole family, not just the young person. Then there's what's your income? How do we get you what's your story? Could you get AB 12 funding? Are you eligible? Are you not? Resume support. It's kind of, we look at, I kind of say, what do you need? And that question gets asked a lot. Do you need anything? Do you need anything? And eventually they start answering it, but it's different at each stage.
That's really insightful. Thank you. And then just one last question for me. So you mentioned, you're mostly funded by private donors, that you don't take money from the city. I assume that gives you more kind of flexibility. Okay, so you would like
it's
to.
It's not a no. It's just I haven't. It's a mix of capacity around grant writing or getting grants.
I see.
So far, but I don't know whether it will or not.
Well, I am curious. Do you feel like that gives you any freedoms? Like, are there like requirements that you hear about, the things that if you take the funding from you have to do? What are the things that you have more leeway, or you feel like you can kind of do the way that you would want now?
Well, I'm experienced with city funding and government funding, and that's a lot of my experience in Australia too. And the Victorian government is very similar to how City of San Francisco works. The freedoms is not the things that people would expect, because I still do case notes. I still do reporting. I think all of that infrastructure is what I would call best practice. And I am accountable to people still, and these are people's lives. To be honest, there's not much I would do differently. I understand there's a lot more meetings or maybe reporting, but there's not much I would do differently. But the freedoms are, I suppose, come down to political or religious components. They're usually the nuances when people say I've got greater funding, a freedom with this or that. But everyone's welcome. This will help you answer it too. When I first got here, everyone was like, do you work with black youth? Do you work with, what if they're pregnant? What if they're LGBT? What if this? My goodness, what is this? What are all these questions? And all I stopped and went, there must be programs that don't do, the questions are coming from what doesn't exist. And I knew I was coming from I was known back there. And I was known that if I help advocate for cultural competency. I help advocate if you're pregnant or had an abortion, or like all the political stuff. Really, I was like, I just say yes to the person and then go on the journey with their heart and mind and their stories. So then the freedom, maybe that's the water part too, is I'm not really your average Joe, I've come to learn, but the freedoms, I don't know if I would do much different at this point. Wow.
Okay. I guess. Okay. No, thank you. Oh, sorry. Very interesting ideas and program. Thank you very much. So when it comes to the ideal design, and you mentioned urban, suburban, and rural, are you referring to like people would have a kind of permanent place in the urban environment, and then they have like a getaway or a temporary part of the year that they go to the suburban or the rural? Or is it like if they grew up in the suburban and they want to change their environment, then maybe the next phase in their life is one of the other two? Or is it like a, kind of a getaway?
It's a little bit both end. Less in the getaway and thinking about the stages of healing. So some people need to get away and be in like not close, like 3 or 4 hours away type thing. And that would be an intentional program where that would serve a purpose for healing and transformation in that young person's life. And then depending on the age and stage, like they could be, let's say it's for 14 to 17-year-olds, they then may need to, they may go to college, or they may, the exit of that stage could be different. But I would love to then have options of apartments in, if they're like, I need to still stay with Turntable, but I would love to just be in Hayward instead of back in Potrero Hill, then having those options, and then we can find that. So ultimately, I would love to see young people still move through phases because they need to see that change, but know that they could be supported within our organisation for 5 years, which is not typically seen as short or medium term housing. That would be seen as long term. And then same with, but some may only stay in the urban space, or some may only stay in the suburban space. And but I like your idea too. That's a good one.
You had mentioned when you were interviewing Faith that after working with her for a month, she was work ready. What did you work on to get her work ready? Do you have a program? Do you have materials? How do you work with your people to get that?
That's our so it's both end as well. So that's our partnership. Thanks to our partnership with Young Community Developers, they run that whole program. YCD are absolutely phenomenal. The beauty of when you find a partner that has the same heart or culture, and same with Love Never Fails, is you are expanding your resources, and the collaborative leadership is really important. So just knowing that, I mean, then I found out I knew Faith's trainer. I'm like, no wonder you're smiling every day. You get to spend every day with this person. But the work readiness is not just YCD. The work readiness is Faith. The work readiness is the young people showing up as well. But on top of that, like I picked Faith up. I took her on the first day. She's a grown young woman, but we still need care. So I walked up the stairs with her and made sure she felt comfortable, because it was new, and just because I can. And if she didn't want it, then I wouldn't have done it either. But helping people feel that integrated phases, and then we were still doing our, because as you know, I've worked with her for a couple of years. So that it wasn't like, oh, off you go to YCD, I'll see you in 4 weeks. It was those layers of support.
Robynne, thank you so much for being here. I see on one end of the spectrum, there's a mentality like a scientist. On the other end, there's a mentality like an artist. In the middle, there's a coach. I see you as a coach that has the artist and the scientist together. You have 28 people in your care. Do you have plans to scale? And you mentioned that there's a limit on your bandwidth. How would you dream about the impact that you could make in the future, and how could you get there in this terms of the scalability of the solution that you have as a coach, and how to extrapolate forward from that?
That is a high compliment. Thank you. I'm humbled. Before I scale, I want to do better and offer all that these current young people deserve. I believe they deserve. The phone calls don't stop, and I hate saying no. But the word's getting out, which is great. Young person brings 3 cousins, and then they all want to work, and I want to do it all too. So I'm trying to get creative in that. But the immediate need is funding for case managers. That's the bottom line. But I seem to have a superpower in accessing housing options at the moment. I acknowledge that. I've got housing organisations asking me, what am I doing? And I'm like, well, I've been working on it for 10 years. And, if you have I don't know if it's a superpower, but, it's a miracle that every time. I still don't get used to it. I'm still amazed. I've got landlords banging on my door asking, but every time I want that to work. I want that to be a positive experience for the landlord and the young person and the community. So that's why it's not just a matter of a lease and a phone call once a month. So the case management part is very important. Then like when I had the programs that I do and don't do, it's a matter of what does scaling look like as well. Do I wait until I've got all the 5 programs that I would like to offer first and then keep growing? But at the end of the day, all of those programs are a nice idea. But as Nicole has said, as much as we all believe, the housing sets the stage for a lot of the other things. I got a grant for wilderness adventure therapy in the pandemic like that because it was outside. But young people, it was like I got to see the difference between a young person that was going to Lodi with me kayaking from stable housing versus not. The experience, it's still a good experience. It was a great idea, but it really reminded me that if we have our positive, safe place to belong, that's mine, and I can know all of that. So I'm not opposed to scaling at all. I want to help as many young people as we can, and I would love to see those things grow. But I want the case management and community mentors would be my need. And
it's a beautiful program, and thank you for sharing. In listening to you, I want to make a couple of suggestions to replace case management and case manager. You're really a personal helper, a personal assistant. And if you're wealthy, you can hire a personal assistant. If you're successful, you have the administrative assistant that does all the things that need to be done so you can be successful. So the people that you are, you're not managing them, you're assisting them to become all that they can be. And if you want to hire people that are like you, which I think we'd all say you should, then you're really looking for people who desire to assist those they're serving, and they're not managing anybody. Then the paperwork becomes not the central thing, but just one thing that they have to do in their job of personally assisting others.
in comment to you, I don't know if I'm allowed to, but the beauty of this conversation and having Kayla and Faith in the room is the beauty of having our wonderful people in the room amidst this conversation is let's keep talking about it, because I'd love to know what you think, because you will be very good people to share with that too. I have never thought about that before. I like that. Thank you.
Okay, so we're going to take one last question. I know we're at time right now, but if you don't mind, one last question and then we'll wrap up. Ted?
I was just talking with another friend, and they also have a superpower at a lot of things, but finding lots of, like, they have a network of landlords who love to partner with their organization. They had, this is a very giving person, so this person had helped their friends, with other nonprofits, with her connections, but then they ran into a problem because the other nonprofit was good, but not at the same level of safeguards. So she wasn't able to protect her brand, and unfortunately, it burned a bridge with a landlord who had lots of places. So that person is rethinking the strategy. And our conversation was, how can we work together? You're just like any other business. If Starbucks puts its name on something, it better be Starbucks. Okay. Anyways, I was wondering if you had similar experiences, or if you've had a negative experience with a renter who has not been the best renter, or how have you dealt with that? Like,
I've had plenty. So this is not, like I said, this is not the first time I've done this here, but the experience I had in Australia was that the government owned all the properties, and the government funded my organisation to provide the service within that. And so that's been my learning curve for the last 10 years, is how do I San Franciscoize this? And so that's part of with that the intake, where I'm trying to assess and learn what's your story, and I need to know these things for supporting you as much as suitable matching for housing. And we're not a real estate program for youth. It is an intentional personal development organization as well. So I need to, one of my board is talking to me a lot about getting the information out of my head onto paper so I can train others in it. And that's part of scaling it, that whether that's scaling internally, or I always think scaling means 5 states, but it's not always. Scaling is just equipping that. So are you talking about like sneaking in a boyfriend, or
yes,
smashing
how do you
walls and
make
stuff?
sure that they don't do bad things that are going to burn the bridge with the, and then when they do, how have you mitigated that so that the landlord, so you deal with it and make it right, so the landlord still loves you and people keep coming to you?
Yeah. Well, sadly, not everyone still loves me after those stories. Sometimes we figure it out and we part ways amicably, but it's not like they're going to do it again. But I'm always learning from that. One is that, and Vanessa Russell and I learn from each other in what we do, very different things and very similar things as well. There's the commitment to, like, you've got to still be committed to the laws of tenancy laws in the city, and then the fairness of programming as well. So there are the being written up, warnings and those sorts of things. The lease is assessed, so it's fair for the young people as much as for the landlord and everyone in between. We have a housing commitment as much as so a housing commitment is the young person's commitment to working with case managers. Then we have the lease, and then we have the housing commitment that works for people living together as well. So that's why we have a housing coordinator, plus mentors, plus case managers. Because for the type of work we're trying to do for young people in trauma, but it's not a facility that's locked down and lock and key, that's why it needs so much resourcing. I am a big believer in second and third chances as well. And it's not first cross and you're out the door. It's an opportunity to talk about this too. It does mean then, as we grow and expand, the need for the business model to have a lot of financial buffer to cover some of those if there's damages as well. and being committed to try again, but being okay to say we've done what we can as well. It's probably a longer conversation, but I've definitely got more to say.
This other person's short answer was you have to treat the landlords as they're as much of your client as the young person. Or they're not.
That's a good way of putting it. I'm
That's
doing a
actually-
lot
you
of
have to.
trauma-informed
Yeah,
coaching.
you have to treat them with that level of importance.
Well, thank you so much, Robynne. I'm sure you'll stick around for a few minutes if there are other questions. Let's please give Robynne a round of applause. Thank you so much for sharing.